Hello and welcome back. I'm Natalie MacDonald and you're watching Sydney Direct on Dukascopy TV. The GST debate has reared its head once again in Australia, so I caught up with Nicki Hutley, Chief Economist at the Urbis, for her views. Nicki Hutley, many thanks for taking the time to chat with Dukascopy TV again. Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Great to be with you.
Okay, so we're talking GST once again. Now, online pricing, housing affordability, even a look at some import valuations have been called into question with this renewed GST debate. Who really are the winners and the losers almost?
Well, I think you have to look at this in the issue of tax reform across the economy. And I think there are a lot of economists who thought that when we introduced the GST and we had some things that applied and the exemptions where it didn't, we've had the imported goods where you had the low value threshold, all of this just makes the system more complex, more unwieldy, less transparent. It's not as good at revenue raising. And there's probably another 80 odd billion or so that we could be raising if it were more uniformly applied to all goods and services. The thing with the GST is it can be, or it is regressive. It affects those on low incomes more than it does on high incomes, and so you have to compensate for that. But the debate should be around where the GST falls, making sure you compensate those who are worse off, making sure that you use it as a really good revenue raiser, and also making us more competitive by adjusting other tax rates, including income, but also corporate tax rates, to make Australia more competitive. And that way, by and large, we're all winners.
Now, business groups are almost okay with GST as long as it were to replace some other state taxes. If we see this sort of redistribution almost of business outgoings, could that almost free up some cash and prompt some business investment, do you think?
Well, I think that's certainly what those promoting the GST expansion are actually hoping, is that we will get this lower tax rate and it will prompt in businesses to invest more. We saw from research from the Reserve Bank quite recently that businesses have quite a high hurdle rate of return now, around 10% on average. And given that, obviously what will help get over that hurdle rate is a lower corporate tax rate. So it is very much so about, as I said, getting that whole picture of corporate tax, of tax reform, both with the corporate sector, with GST across all sectors.
Consumer spending. Key really to supporting Australian economic growth. If we're seeing unemployment unlikely to improve anytime soon, we've had very flat wage growth also. If we're seeing now also a rise in GST, can Australian consumers really afford to keep spending?
Well, they can, because don't forget we're going to have a change in personal income tax as well. So we're changing the base of it. And yes, look, some people will face a higher bill who are high consumers and spend a bigger portion of their income. But they have the choice not to spend. They have the choice to save instead. And they will also have that compensatory income tax adjustment, or if you're very low, not on a wage, perhaps some other sort of form of benefit to support you. We saw when we first introduced the GST that we had a big increase in spending before it came in. We then had a big decline for a little while, and then we readjusted to that tax base. So this is saying it's a readjustment of the tax system. Yes, of course, we're also saying we're going to collect more tax. That means perhaps something less for consumption, for consumer and the consumption part of the economy. But it's going to be more of a temporary impact rather than a long-term drag on economic growth.
Something else though I wanted to sort of ask you about is we're in a very low interest rate environment at the moment. Interest rates at some point are going to have to rise. Is this going to prompt artificial inflation, and could that then also be a concern to consumer spending?
Look, interest rates do feed into the consumer price index, but obviously when the Reserve Bank is setting its monetary policy, it's looking through some of those artificial rises. So it looks at the trimmed mean of inflation. So when you get a big jump in mortgage rates when the cycle turns, that won't be counted as inflationary. Obviously, though, when workers are looking at what inflation's doing, they're looking at the headline number. They know what the impact is on their weekly income, and so they're looking to recoup some of that in wages. If, however, they can't negotiate that through productivity increases, then they may be a little bit worse off. But I think they don't have the power these days to be negotiating. We've seen this. Wages, as you said, are being contained. We don't have a strong enough labour market at the moment to really push that through. So I don't think it's going to be a threat. It will show up in the headline numbers, but it won't be a real increase in inflation, and it certainly won't have a significant impact on monetary policy or, in fact, on wages and inflation down the track.
Nicki, always a pleasure to receive your insight. Many thanks.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
Our thanks, as always, there to Dukascopy TV regular Nicki Hutley. That's all we've got time for right now, but I'll be back with plenty more exclusive interviews for you. For now, though, it's goodbye.